Audience testing on Meta and TikTok. Which audience is best and has the highest conversion rates? Which one should you use for new creatives? Maybe you want to scale your ad account and you want to try a different audience group and see if that works. We're going to talk through all the options we have at our disposal for audience testing on these paid social platforms as advertisers, and then I'll give you some personal suggestions based on what I've experienced over my 7-year career media buying. Okay. So we're going to cover what the different types of audiences are. We're going to break down each of those types with detail, and then I'll give you my suggestions for each. And then at the end, we'll cover some exceptions to the rule. First up, the types of audiences that you have on Meta, but this also applies to TikTok. You have interest groups, you have lookalike audiences, you have broad targeting, and then you have custom audiences. We'll start at the left. We'll go to interest groups. Basically, what interest groups are is a smaller cohort of users that is interested in the product or service that you're offering. And you would search for the interest group on the actual advertising platform where you go into Meta or TikTok and you look at all the interest groups available. And unfortunately, as we'll get onto in a little bit throughout this video, interest groups are actually quite inaccurate in a lot of cases. There was a study done on Meta's platform specifically that we'll talk about, but the same learnings can be extracted over to TikTok most likely, especially considering the other reasons that we're going to talk about for broad targeting. Lookalike audiences are using prior data that has either transpired in your ad account or with your business via like a CSV file or something, and then the algorithm scans the information that you've provided either with pixel events or custom audience, and then it cross-references all of that data into the user base, and it tries to pinpoint users that are closely resembling the ones that you had put out. And with broad, it's a lot different than interest and lookalikes. So you have no specialization, you have no restrictions, no limitations, and you reach the largest possible cohort of users available to target, which gives you the lowest possible cost, because anytime you use a custom audience, interest, lookalike, doesn't matter, your costs will go up to some degree. And lastly, as a benefit of broad, your creatives aren't going to fatigue as quickly because you don't have to worry about the qualified user pool in the audience that you've selected running out. Custom audiences are pretty straightforward. You have a file or you have customer data. You upload that to Meta or TikTok, and then it can match those emails and phone numbers with its platform based on the user accounts. Now let's cover lookalikes and interest groups. They're best used for testing new cohorts of users against creatives that have already succeeded at broad. They could be good for scale. It really depends on the selection and how much you're investing in these audiences. And my personal suggestion, I would say it is best to avoid using interests and lookalikes. Now, let me explain. Think about it. Take a step back. You are the algorithm. Your goal is to keep users engaged on the platform, and your goal is to make advertisers money. Do you think that this thought process is going to make sense that I'm about to lay out, okay? So you have an advertiser that uploads an ad. That ad gets 1,000 impressions of inventory on your platform. In order to create a better user experience and to make the advertiser more money, the next 1,000 people that see that ad should closely resemble the small percentage of users from the original 1,000 that reacted positively. So you're reaching more users that are more likely to react positively to your ad, which keeps users engaged, happy on the platform. And because you're reaching a higher percentage of users that are more likely to, have a good experience with the ad, you're also increasing the chance that the advertiser makes a sale or converts on their business objective, which makes you more money. That whole process that I described, if my voice wouldn't crack, that whole process that I just described is an ad creating its own lookalike audience. What is a lookalike audience? It's an audience based off of another audience. It's a lookalike of the original audience. So if you upload an ad at broad targeting, that ad creates a lookalike off of itself based on the data that it receives, which makes standard traditional lookalikes a complete waste of time because, again, you're paying more money to use them because they're a custom audience. And when you have a creative that's doing well, you can't scale it because the audience is limited. Okay? Interest groups are a pretty poor investment as well, especially when you don't have a lot of creative winners going on in your ad account. They fatigue really quickly. Again, they have increased costs compared to broad. And as we're about to cover, it's on this slide, there is a study out there that shows that a third of the users in interest groups are actually inaccurate and potentially don't want to see your ads, which causes a whole host of other problems down the road. So North Carolina State University did a study where it found that 30% of the users within Facebook's interest groups are inaccurate or irrelevant, which definitely, it said, could have significant implications. Geez, it definitely does. What are those implications? Well, because there's a third of users in that interest group that are not interested or, as the study says, relevant to the interest itself, that means that your ads are being forced to users that don't want to see them. That lowers the user experience and increased your costs on top of already having a cost spike because you're using a custom audience. And even when you have a winner, you can't even scale it because it's so small compared to broad targeting. Most interest groups are a couple 100,000 or a couple million at most. Not to mention that if you're using broad interest and lookalikes altogether, testing all of your creatives, you're creating more variables for the meta algorithm to take into account when trying to convert on your business objective. And when you do that, it gets dumber and dumber rather than smarter and smarter with less variables to work with. So I would avoid using interest groups. I would avoid using lookalike audiences. But I know some of you are listening to that dropshipping guru that tells you to test those 10 different interests. Ultimately, these audience tools are not for your business's best interest, or for that matter, for the advertising company's best interest. Which brings us to lookalike requirements and percentages breakdowns. Look, I know I just told you not to use these. I am well aware, but I know a lot of you aren't going to listen. And so, if you're going to set yourself up for failure, controversial, I understand. But if you're going to set yourself up for failure by using lookalikes, that's okay. The advertisers that use broad targeting will surpass you, i.e. your competition, and eventually you'll have to make the switch. But if you're gung-ho on using lookalikes, this video is all-encompassing. I'm going to give you the plan that I would do if I were forced with gun to my head to use lookalikes, okay? So you need 100 events in any given region. That could be the United States, that could be United Kingdom, that could be Canada. And there's a percent match between 1% and 10%. The larger the audience size, which is 10%, so it's like 10% of the qualified users versus 1% of the qualified users. 10% is a larger audience size, but it has a reduced match rate of the ideal customer. 1% has the closest match rate to your ideal customer, but at the cost of an audience size, right? Okay. And here's the snowball method. This is something I learned a long time ago with lookalikes. So basically, if you're starting a new ad account, or maybe you don't have a lot of data in your existing ad account, or you just want to focus on video creative specifically, you can go through view content, add to cart, initiate checkout, and purchase if you're running a sales campaign. You can create lookalikes for each one of these steps, and hopefully, ideally, your performance will be better. Of course, as I just mentioned before, these aren't the best tools for testing new creative. You should only be using these once you're spending a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s a day profitably, and then introduce these technical tests. Until then, focus on testing creative, because broad targeting is by far the best audience that you can use for almost every situation. It's best used for testing new creative, as we just spoke about, but it's also really good for scaling because it has the largest possible audience of qualified users, 330-something million in the United States. Are your ads ever really going to fatigue unless you're spending millions of dollars a month on them? Probably not. I've been there. I've spent $3 million on one asset, $75,000 a day on a static image, all using broad targeting. They didn't fatigue. But I can guarantee you, if they were on an interest group with 1 million people in there, they would. Broad is great because it maximizes placement liquidity. It works with the algorithm to find the most profitable and most qualified users, which lowers your cost, typically formed by CPMs. And when you find a creative test at broad and it's succeeding, you can scale to the moon. So that's why I always suggest that you use broad targeting in almost every situation. And as an added note, I know my face is covering this. I tried to make the slide a little bit more relaxed for it, but let me see if I can put it at the bottom. No, maybe up here, maybe over here. All right, we'll figure it out. Creatives do the targeting. I'll move all the way across the screen. Creatives do the targeting on Meta and TikTok, not the specific audience selection. I know it's counterintuitive, but it is how the algorithms work. You are supposed to develop new creative batches that are tailored to different cohorts of your market. If you have different marketing angles, do not select interest groups based on those angles. Make unique creative batches based on those angles and upload them with broad targeting. You will win so much more often. If you have different demographics of people that purchase from your brand, make ads with talent in the video that have those different demographics: elderly, middle-aged, and young, male and female. And you have to keep in mind as well that users, let me move myself back over to the bottom left-hand corner again, users react differently to different creative styles. Some users love UGC ads. Some users like animation. They think it's really cool. Some like high production. Some like a founder face cam selfie iPhone style where you're talking to the screen and as the founder of the business. A lot of authority and credibility. Some have TikTok brand and they like mashup styles where you have a bunch of stuff going on at the same time. So we have to cater to all of these different types of users. Different demographics, different ages, different genders, different creative styles, different mediums, videos, and images. That is how we test audiences on Meta and TikTok, not using audience selections. Here's the TLDR to make it really simple. Unless you're spending a ton of money each day already, you should not split test your ads with audiences on Meta and TikTok. You are paying a premium to reach unqualified users while also excluding a ton of good users that otherwise would have converted on your business objective. Additionally, you limit your ability to scale your ad account because the audiences inherently will depreciate over time and get worse and worse and worse, whereas with broad targeting, your data gets better and better and smarter over time. And that promotes a good user experience, which lowers your costs further. Work with the algorithms and the machine learning. They're a lot smarter than you or I combined. And there are some exceptions to what we just spoke about. So for exclusions, I know I just said use broad with no exclusions, but there are some instances where it might be worth adding some exclusions or age and gender restrictions. Yes. For exclusions, maybe your email list or your CSV file of past purchasers. Does it make sense to retarget people that have already bought from your business? Or, more importantly, that are already on your email list and receiving emails? Probably not. Maybe an email would have converted them anyway. Age and gender. Maybe you find out that there's a certain demographic of customers that are less profitable to your business over others. Maybe you find out that people between the ages of 18 and 25 don't spend nearly as much money with your business from an average order value perspective. Okay, so then maybe you consider testing all new creatives with 25 plus age range. Right? Another example could be accredited investors for real estate syndications and funds. I've done a lot of that. If you want to learn how to get clients and sales for your business, join the Paid Ads Roundtable. It's free. You pay $0. You'll be able to learn the ins and outs of paid ads on Facebook and TikTok. You'll have one-to-one messaging access with me directly, the media buyer behind Steve Harvey and EA Sports. I've spent $70 million over the past 7 years, almost $200 million in directly attributable revenue. I know a thing or two about media buying, and I'm giving it all away for free. It's a free community. There's also 2 masterclasses, one of them coming soon. The other one is a fully fledged media buying masterclass that's going to teach you how to make money with meta ads. And then the ad creation masterclass is going to take you from a beginner that has never made an ad before to an expert that's producing a ton of content each day. Yes, each day, because that's what it takes to win. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the ad creation masterclass that is coming soon. Join the roundtable. Click the first link in the description below. Again, it is completely free. You have nothing to lose. If you prefer to book one-to-one time with me, maybe you have a unique problem in your business, or you just want somebody to walk over your ad account, we can do that. Calendly.com/Lord of Ads. It'll also be in the description below. Come prepared with questions to get the most value. If you want bundles, send me an inquiry at my email. And, of course, all calls are recorded and sent afterwards for easy reference. That is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a like rating down below. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm. And until next time, take care.